All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Learning to Bounce Forward Through Change with Personal Resilience. This is the final session in our Organizational Resilience webinar series, so we're so glad that you were able to join us today. We have a great session ahead led by AVAP Change Management Practice Director, Mark Dillard. Mark brings over 20 years of experience partnering with organizations to drive change and accelerate results in industries such as consumer products, finance, public health, energy, and higher education. His areas of expertise include leading the design and execution of change strategies in support of enterprise-wide initiatives, developing internal capability to manage and sustain complex changes, developing leaders at all levels, executive coaching, and human capital management. He holds a master's of industrial and organizational psychology and is ProSci certified. Before I hand it over to Mark, I want to point out that if you have a question, feel free to submit at any time during the webinar using either the Q&A box or the chat box, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. And then lastly, an on-demand version of today's webinar will be available on our website in approximately 2 business days. And everyone who registered for this webinar will receive an email with a link to view it on demand, along with the other sessions on demand in case you missed them. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark now. Let's get started.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa. I want to make sure everybody hears me okay. Am I good with volume, Vanessa?
Yeah, sounds good.
Good. Great. Thank you for everybody. I know everybody's probably really busy. Thanks for kind of taking a slice of your day to spend with us here to talk about resilience. I'm broadcasting here from Atlanta, Georgia, actually with a view of beautiful Piedmont Park as we speak. And thanks to those who are returning participants from either the last session or last 2 sessions. And for those who are new, just to give you kind of some context, Shannon Sims, Vice President of Practice, did a session on change fatigue. Then I have done the last 2 sessions, including this one. The first one introducing organizational resilience and the factors that impact that. And this is kind of a drill down into personal resilience. As Vanessa said, please do bring your questions into the chat box. Clearly, my email's at the end and my contact information is at the end of this. If you have questions just for me, I'm happy to respond to those questions after this session. Also, just kind of get your cell phones ready. There's a couple of fun poll everywhere questions that we'll do. There'll be instructions for doing it, but the easiest way is through your cell phone. So let's get started. Those of you who were in previous sessions saw this, but I think it's helpful to kind of remind us of where we are, kind of setting the context. I won't spend a lot of time on it. Again, we're starting to see a lot of research come out that things ain't so great. People are tired. You would think the opposite would be true. You know, people are working from home, but that's not the case. You kind of never are able to step away from work, and then there's a lot of other things going on. And one of the things I'll highlight and repeat is, you know, organizations and people have done their best, and their best mostly has been, you know, reacting, keeping heads above water. Again, both organizationally and individually, and there's nothing wrong with that. I talk about. Vanessa talked about my leadership development experience. I talk about this as well. It's fine until it becomes not so, and until it becomes exhausting. We can't spend our whole day, every day, in a reactive orientation. It goes for organizations as well. So what we're talking about here is really kind of shifting that. Okay. So we talked about COVID. I mean, there's a lot of things related to COVID that are creating some compounding of stress. You know, those of you who are young parents, I'm not a young parent. My kids are in college. Those of you who are young parents, I can only imagine the challenges you're managing. There are people that don't have jobs or being impacted financially. There's other things going on from a stressor standpoint. You know, those that have aging parents, worrying about them. So there are other things even besides COVID kind of keeping us from maintaining that good balance as well sometimes as we like. So if you flip forward, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but as you can imagine, the APA, the American Psychological Association, has been all over this, probably starting early summer as I was doing my research. And there's just a lot going on in addition to COVID, including as we speak right now, the impeachment. So, for a lot of people, that's stressful. And so it's just a lot of things kind of, I think, compounding, that are adding stress to people's lives. Click forward, please. And it's not getting any better. One would hope it would start to get better with the hope of a vaccine specifically related to COVID. But not surprisingly, those of us who are involved in complex organizational changes, getting 1 billion vaccines out into people's arms is proven to be a challenge. So there's a lot of things going on that are creating some stress. Go forward, please. A big reason for this is cortisol. Cortisol is, and if you read about cortisol, I was just reading earlier today from the American Psychiatric Journal. I think it's American Psych. It's a psychiatric journal about cortisol, and this is our stress hormone. It kicks in when we get hit with a stress event, and it's important, right? It helps us get through that stress event. The problem becomes when that alarm bell keeps ringing. It doesn't slow down or stop. So, someone keeps hitting the panic button, or you have that child that keeps coming back at you, or that coworker, or that stress incident. And what happens when we get too much cortisol, and we've all been there before, is it impacts our ability to make decisions. It makes easy things feel harder. It makes remembering things more difficult, and you can have kind of over kind of wrought emotional reactions, atypical emotional reactions. So this may be someone coming to you and say, wow, I usually aren't this stressed out, or usually aren't this angry. What might be going on? That's kind of cortisol going on there. So cortisol is a natural human response, but where it becomes a problem is when you can't kind of take your foot off that alarm, and it adds up. So if you go forward, please. And I'm not, by the way, isn't this a great picture, this dog? And this is not intended to be Pollyannish, but I think I'm trying to transition now into kind of a more healthy, productive response to this, is to kind of zoom out and look at things maybe through a different lens. And again, not to be Pollyannish, but there probably are slivers of good things happening, or productive things happening, whether it's you realizing, maybe I should get out and walk more, or maybe I should reach out to colleagues I haven't talked to in a while, or old friends. When you're cooped up, maybe that's caused you to go out and start writing more, whether it's a novel or some kind of business article. And there have been some good things documented happening. Families have connected more. Drive-in movies are making a comeback. A record number of people voting. Pet adoption skyrocketed. I can tell you, I have a 90-pound yellow lab, and it's been the best year of his life. He gets like 4 walks a day, sometimes whether he wants one or not. So it has been a tough year, but there has been some, I believe, some positive. And if you can't immediately find any positive, I would encourage you to do so. And I want to start doing that right now. So let's have some fun with this. Poll EV, what good have you seen out of 2020? So we've all focused on the bad, including me in the early part of this. What good? I think got to click one more to get the thing there. Nope. We lost our poll EV.
Sorry guys. Let's try to share again.
Yeah. So we're going to get the instructions for poll EV hopefully here. Okay, there it is.
There
so yeah, just go in there, log into pollev.avap.com, and this is just a word cloud. This is anonymous. We don't know who's saying what, but and again, have fun with it. What good has come out of 2020 for you? Yeah, I hear you there. Yes. Mm-hmm. Family, yes. Family time. I like that. I love seeing that. There's a big, big thing there. No commute. I can't remember the last time I put gas in my car. Netflix. Yeah, that's all great stuff. Saving money. Yes, saving money. Awesome. That's a great list. It's funny. I would like to say I can say saving money now, but I don't know how many of you on this call have boys as kids in your family. But I got twin boys who are juniors in college, and when they're home over the summer, I don't think I saved any money on food. As a matter of fact, I think my grocery bills doubled, if not tripled. So I'm saving money now. Travel, yeah, this is great. You guys have a healthy mindset on the call here. This is terrific. So there are some good things. The point is maybe just intentionally think about some of those good things. Yeah, yeah. I did spend more on food, but now food has cost. Yeah. Food is more expensive. It is. So the point is thinking about, that yeah, it was a rough year. Yeah, it can be challenging, and we continue to have challenges. This is not meant to be, again, fake kind of optimism here, but there are some good things. I discovered this wonderful thing called the library, where you can actually go online and put books on hold and go pick them up without ever getting out of your car. So yeah, this is great. I would encourage you to keep this in mind as you kind of move forward, and some of these things are great strategies for managing through stress and strengthening your resilience. Thank you for that fantastic response. Okay, let's move forward. This is just a kind of a reconnect. Those of you who weren't on the session last week, we did introduce kind of organizational resilience and the 3 key factors to that. I believe, like Vanessa said, you can go watch this version if you haven't. But we introduced 3 factors. The one we're talking about today, personal resilience. We also talked about transformational leadership, which really is leaders helping others through change, and then change agility, which is standard kind of organizational change management plus a bunch of other things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I just did want to reset that this is one of those factors, and I could probably spend 3 hours on each one of these factors, but we thought this one would be most impactful. Okay. So let's talk about personal resilience, and I want to start with this. And I introduced this briefly in the last session, this notion of general adaptation syndrome. The cortisol kicks in, something happens to us in phase 1. It's like, fight or flight, right? Then we click, if you click forward, we click it, we hit these coping strategies. We start applying these coping strategies, right? And we manage through this, and we're getting through okay, and we're hanging in there. The problem becomes, if you click, if we don't do anything about that, eventually we kind of crash. Your reserves get depleted. I'm exhausted. That's someone saying, I'm up to here with this. But I think there is something we can do about this. And I think what we can do about it is, if you click through, is try to reframe it as an opportunity to, while it may have been painful and not easy, we can grow and move into a different place as a result of this. We can kind of create our new normal. I just thought of this now, but one of the great commercials during the Super Bowl, I don't know if anybody remembers it, was the girl who was born with the leg. I think she was missing most of both of her legs, and became a fantastic swimmer. She was super fit. I actually saw an interview with her on the news. I mean, that's a pretty extreme example, but she took a lousy situation and kind of created a new normal for herself, and is really thriving as a result. So this really is bouncing forward. This is, I'm ready for this. I'm gonna learn from this, and we're going to talk about some strategies to do that. So let's go forward. So really, when I think about resilience, it's not just coping, although coping is important. You have to cope, particularly with things you can't control. It's really about moving forward, bouncing forward to a different place. Okay. Learning from adversity and developing a new normal. New normal, like unprecedented, is new normal. The phrase is like unprecedented. We've heard a lot of it, but but I think we are organizationally and individually. I think there's some truth to that. We really are moving into a new normal. And I guess my intention with this is to just encourage you to be intentional about that, right? Be intentional about moving to a new normal. Okay. So there are 4 factors, key factors of personal resilience. I've done a lot of research on this. I've actually taught this before in a university. There's a lot of great stuff out there about personal resilience. I think these 4 kind of stand out for me. They're not the be all and end all, but they are all important. So let's start with self-awareness. Learning is important. Again, Vanessa mentioned my experience in leadership development. Any kind of growth in my leadership development work has to start with self-awareness, and personal resilience is no different. So one of the strategies to really strengthen your personal resilience, and it takes work, is reflecting on how have I handled these things in the past. What triggered an unhealthy or healthy response, and can you draw on your strength? That I really did. I had a setback here and I bounced forward great. Why was that? What did I do? Or, hey, I really did a lousy job. I did not respond appropriately to that. How can I do anything different? And then asking yourself, are there any specific characteristics of that triggering event that may have provoked an unhealthy response? And one of the things I'll talk about here in a little bit is one of the strategies is healthy relationships. And this is where you can leverage some of your relationships. Go to your spouse or your friend or your colleague and say, yeah, boy, that was rough. What are your thoughts on how I managed through that? Do you have any advice or counsel for me? So using your relationships to help kind of manage through that's important as well. And there's some tools you can use. This is actually a variation of a tool I've used back in the old days when we actually could get together in person and doing leadership development, is reflecting on your resilience story. And I would actually ask people to fill this thing out and asking these questions. What was the context of the situation? Have I seen this before? And importantly, did I have any assumptions going into this? And sometimes our assumptions become our reality, right? We're assuming the worst. And guess what happens when we go into the situation? It becomes the worst. Now, there's no magic 8-ball involved here. It may be a crappy situation, but it's important to kind of check your assumptions at the door. We talk about this when we do interviewing and stuff like that. Same thing in a situation where you're kind of reflecting on something that maybe was a setback for you. So next question would be, what level, identifying the challenges, kind of thinking about the setback and what it looked like. What level of control over this situation did I have? And was I assessing, did I do a correct assessment of my level of control over the situation? One of the things I'll talk about when I talk about perspective is this notion of locus of control. And what you don't want to do is what I call banging your head against a wall, which is, running uphill. So trying to change something you can't change. So trying to affect or influence something you have no influence over. That is the banging your head against the wall effect, and that's not a healthy response. Okay, forward. And then, what happened, right? So it's kind of, it's a very model very similar to kind of coaching. How did I leverage my relationships to work through this? What other skills or knowledge did I bring into play to help me deal with this situation? If it was something that was completely out of my control, how did I handle it? Did I cope effectively, right? So it's kind of walking through a resilience story in an intentional way. And again, I've used this as an actual worksheet with people, and what I would do is ask them to take time to go through this and then actually share it with another person. It can be very powerful, as you can imagine, and personal sometimes. Okay. Perspective. I talked a little bit about this, and I like to talk about locus of control here a little bit. When I first kind of got into resilience, I was doing leadership work with Emory University. I actually ran leadership programs for Emory University. And I did some work with some psych professors, and we got into these conversations about locus of control. And what locus of control basically is the degree which people believe they, as opposed to external forces, have control over the outcome events in their lives. So people who have a strong internal locus of control believe the events in their life are a result of their own actions, their hard work or their ingenuity or their creativity. People that lack a strong or a big external locus of control are we all know them, right? The victims, right? They tend to blame external things for their setbacks. Not surprisingly, people with a strong internal locus of control also have the stronger resilience muscles. So that's where you get into kind of assessing your level of control over a situation and avoiding banging your head against the wall and avoiding being a victim. So view setbacks not as some kind of insurmountable obstacle, but as a challenge. And one of the things I've read recently in a business publication is kind of viewing big challenges as almost a puzzle. How can I unravel this puzzle and work through this puzzle? And I've used that before, and it works. It really does. It becomes not fun, but more of a creative activity. And then if we click forward, and then maintaining a healthy but realistic optimism for growth or learning that comes through setbacks. And again, that gets back to the internal locus of control. So there are parts of this, for example, I can't control, and that maybe, and then maybe there are parts that I can control or influence. So that really is where the value of reflection comes into this. Okay. So let's kind of take a little sidetrack here and watch a little video. Sound? There it is.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do. That's it.
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
Walking down the sidewalk, kicking my feet as I move to the music. Step to the beat. I woke up today, canceled all my plans, and I stepped right outside with my.
All right, you can go ahead, Vanessa. Well, it's a funny video. I've used that before. I don't know if anybody on here has seen it. It's actually a commercial. I believe it's an international company. I don't remember the name of it. But from a resilience standpoint, I would just make sure you don't find yourself standing on an escalator wondering what to do. That obviously gets at the most extreme level into the notion of control and locus of control, but also goes to resilience. So don't get stuck on an escalator. Just walk off if you have to. Positive relationships. This is kind of the blood that runs through, I would say, the body of these personal resilience characteristics. Because these can help you both get reflect on your own personal resilience story. These are the people that can help you, I'm gonna talk about self-care, motivate you to get out and kind of focus on self-care. This is, and they can also be a mirror for you, right? From a self-awareness standpoint, increasing your self-awareness. So healthy relationships are real important in managing through personal resilience. So I would encourage you to tap into your network of relationships. This is not going on LinkedIn and, hey, what can you do for me? What can I do for you? Although, sometimes that's important. It's, hey, I just want to check in with you, see how you're doing. Again, there's a lot of people that are struggling right now, don't have jobs. These are the people, your network of people, both professional and personal, family and friends, who support and care about you, and you support and care about them. And they can be huge in helping you get through this stuff. So I would encourage you to find that space to have that restorative dialogue with friends, family, colleague. And I know it's hard because we can't really get together like we used to be able to get together. But I do a Sunday call with my extended family on Zoom every Sunday, every week. We schedule a Sunday call. And my father, who can't see us, it is not perfect, but it's restorative, and you've got to be intentional about it. You've got to make time to do this, and it can really help. And the last little sentence there: dedicate time to help others. That is just, I think, giving back, and there's a lot of positive that can come from that for both you and the people that you're helping. There's a lot of people that are struggling. I've seen people on LinkedIn say, hey, if anybody needs any help in my network, let me know. I think that's terrific. I think that's great stuff. And that's about positive relationships. Okay. And then self-care, you got to take care of yourself. Shannon, in the first session, when she talked about change fatigue, talked about this. You've got to make time for yourself somehow. And whatever it is for you, pick it and roll with it. And the first, if you'll click, the first thing important about this, we're all busy professionals. I'm a management consultant. I'm busy even being remote. You got to put it on the calendar. You got to put it on the calendar. I'm a runner. If I can't find time to run, I will reach out to people and say, hey, can we move this meeting? Because this is the only time I can go run. I am not shy about doing that. And people that have worked with me know that. Now, it's not the most important thing, but it's about setting time on a calendar to be able to do the things that are restorative for you. And you cannot ignore you. If you're young parents, you got to make time to, hey, now it's your time. Let me go out and you take the kids. I mean, it just takes, I had twins, so I know what that's like. And then focus on the active engagement with something that's restorative, physically, intellectually, psychologically. Some of those things that this group actually threw up on the poll EV when we did that. Some of those things are terrific. So one more poll EV, again, a positive one. What are some of your self-care strategies? Same thing. I'm wondering if I'm going to see tequila pop up here, which is maybe a short-term manageable self-care strategy. Exercise, absolutely. Crafting, I love it. Gardening, yes. And plan for it. Walking and running. Friends, Pilates, yeah, yoga, crafting. See, these are all great. This is all great stuff. Exercise is big there. That's good. Awesome. Again, like the kind of what positive has come out of 2020. I would just encourage you to be intentional about these things and stay with them. They're even more important than ever. And again, you can leverage this is where kind of the healthy relationships intersect. Things you can do with friends. Yeah, call friends. That's great. Good. All right, thank you. Let's go to the kind of last slide here. In summary, and I hope we'll have questions after this. Just know your warning signs. I mean, you know yourself generally better than anybody else. You know when you start feeling stress. If you do, walk out, go for a walk with a dog, or do something. So just be aware of your warning signs, and then take some steps. Identify one action you can do immediately. And it doesn't have to be, I'm going to change my life or, do something radically different. It can be, at lunch every day, I'm going to lay down and close my eyes for 20 minutes. There's nothing wrong with that. Or I'm going to go for a walk and commit to doing it every day or when you can. I'm not, again, there are things, life sometimes gets in the way, but being consistent about it. and then using your personal resilience, and then using kind of your goal is really just to bounce forward and grow and get better every day in the face of disruption. I'm going to close it out there. There's my contact information. I hope you found this helpful. So I'll open it up to questions, and I'll turn it over to Vanessa to navigate through that.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. That was a great session. And thanks everyone for participating in our poll EV questions. We did have 2 questions come in throughout the webinar, but if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to send them in once again through the Q&A box or the chat box. So the first question, Mark, says, I find it hard to change my perspective and focus on the positive when I am stressed. What is one quick way to turn it around when I get in that negative mindset?
Well, one of the things I would encourage that person to do is probably to employ one of those strategies, probably self-care. So again, if you find yourself getting triggered with some kind of stress response, sometimes it's good just to remove yourself as much as you can temporarily from what is maybe triggering that stress response. So I'm standing here staring at Piedmont Park right now in Atlanta. If I had a stressful meeting, I might just walk across the street and go for a 10-minute walk with my dog in the park. So that allows you to kind of refocus and maybe reframe what's going on. So that would be my advice, is to kind of practice a little self-care and then very near term, and then kind of reset there.
Great, thanks, Mark. And then this next question says, as a leader, how do I encourage my team to do things like self-care in an effort to build their resilience?
Well, one of the things that I would reinforce and is the thing I mentioned about putting it on your calendar. So if your team if you sense that they're not managing the stress and the problems, encourage them to do that, and encourage them to be upfront about getting that time to be able to do those things. And then I would just, and I said this in the last session, if you're a leader of a team, create dedicated time to listen to them, not to give them instruction, but to say, hey, I just want to schedule time just to check in with you and see how you're doing, and if there's anything I can do to help. So that kind of gets into the healthy relationships strategy and personal resilience. But kind of encouraging them to set aside time, reaching out to them with no agenda other than to check in with them would be what I would suggest.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. It looks like those are all of the questions that came in. But if anyone has any more questions or wants to talk more about personal and organizational resilience with Mark, his email is there up on the screen. And before we end, just want to remind everyone that we will be sending out this recording. So please feel free to share with your colleagues who you might think benefit from it. And yeah, thanks again for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, everybody.